Okay, so welcome back. And because I'm taking you through the process of kind of making a leaflet map, why don't we do a little bit of data searching together? I'm not just going to provide it right off the bat. Well, I mean, I am, because it's going to be in your notes folder and all the information is going to be where you need it. But I mean that I'm not just going to run over that part as though that data is easily available everywhere. We're going to find data fairly easily, but I want to actually go through the process of having to go get a hold of it ourselves and just manage it. Of course, I have streamlined this for you. I spent my time trying to find the right data for this course, but it's important that you know that the process is harder than it looks. So let's head into map data. Is that where I wanted to be? Yes, here we are. We're looking at filters. Ultimately, that's why we are dealing with map data, because we're going to start to do filters, and we're going to want to link together what's on the map with the kind of filters we have interacting on the side. Now, there are a lot of different frameworks you can use for building filters and interactivity, but ultimately, they're all going to have the same basic principles of needing to show and hide, and the same API commands will pretty much apply across the board, whether you're talking about Google Maps API, Mapbox, or Leaflet. They're all going to have similar methods, though they're not going to be exactly the same, as you might imagine. And those idiosyncrasies are rather aggravating. Now, in the meantime, let's go look. So, I wanted to do something with data that would involve like the US, like some states, or maybe the world. Maybe the world as like, we can have something that's happening globally. So, yeah, let's go with something globally. So, one thing that might be nice is to check something that happens within um, all countries, and we'll have the shapes of all the countries around. So, why don't we go and easy. World borders data set, da da da. Let's go to the first one. So, it looks like they have shape files, as we've mentioned. That's pretty cool. Some people just doing fun stuff with that. Um, that's actually really cool. And then there's a bunch of different types of 3D data going on. Okay, so those are all shape files. You know what? Why don't we look for GeoJSON since we know how to load those in. GeoJSON. World.geojson. Okay, so this is one for the world. Um, let's see here. It's pretty quick, so this is a pretty small file. I'm just going to save this link, and I'm just going to call it countries.json. Save it in downloads, and we'll put it here into our folder. Okay, so now we have a separate GeoJSON, and I don't want to load this in to this page because it's going to be huge like this one we have set up here. So one of the issues there is that we have to call out to the file, and if you've done any JavaScript, you've probably run into asynchronous calls and all that kind of stuff. So you can keep your data, separated out into not just like one file that's enormous with all that. So we're gonna have to do Ajax calls. So we already have jQuery, so we could do an Ajax call this way with the Ajax and do this URL thing and whatnot. But why don't we be a little better and use the JavaScript, the new JavaScript thing, the fetch. So I have it over here. So I have a fetch call ready, just pre-built for exactly what we're going to do. And I'm just going to paste it in. We called it countries.geojson. Now, if you haven't used fetch, might be a little confusing, but I'm going to get you to, let's see here. Just going to get this working. Okay. I'm just going to get you to copy this from the file that I've prepared for you for this whole section, and you'll be able to see. So fetch is just built into JavaScript now. You put in the location and then the method. You get back a response, and you can pre-format it for when you actually use it. And now what I just have it doing here is once that file comes back, it loads it in as a GeoJSON right off the bat. And I also set the fill opacity to 0. So we're just doing a little bit of work here, just like we've done. It's actually quite a lot simpler than a lot of the stuff we've been doing down here. So let's just save that and see what we get. So we had no opacity, so we should still be able to see lines. So let's see if we have a problem. Oh, looks like we have this CORS error happening. So this is very commonly going to happen when you try to do an API call locally. Now, there's a couple different things you can do. I have in Chrome add-on that lets me usually overcome this, but even in this case it won't, because it really says fetch is really serious about this. So what we really have to do is actually just shoot up a little server for ourselves. So I'm going to go into this folder, which I believe I've called Leaflet. Yes, and I'm going to start a little server in here, and how I do that is using Python. So Python m simple HTTP server, and then just make a port. So depending on the system you're in, this may be not as easy in a step. If you really can't get anything working, upload your file to an actual server on the internet, maybe through FTP, and just upload and make your changes by uploading it. And having the files next to each other. It's the only way you can really do that fetch call. Lastly, if you absolutely can't get this working, then you can still make this work. You just have to change countries.json to countries.js, okay? And you need to make this, I'll do it with you. So we need to go, okay, that new file, we paste the whole countries thing in, go back up to the top, back over, we make this an actual variable like var countries, okay? We save that as countries.js, and we save that in the folder. Okay, and now what we could do is actually in index.html, before we load all this script, we also load countries.js, and then we will have access to the variable countries. So I'll just console log here countries, and we do that. Okay, but yeah, let's just console log that. So you can see here we actually loaded countries without the CORS error occurring. Now ultimately that's probably not what you want to do, but it is an option. So that I just want to show you that in case you prefer to do that rather than try to do all the server stuff. But I'm going to work with the Ajax call because that's how usually on a professional level you're going to end up doing this with large bits of data or dynamic parts of data. So I'm going to keep this GeoJSON call in here. So I'm going to comment out a bunch of our other stuff now. Here, comment this out. Okay, what's that? Okay, so that's all right. And now we'll just load this in the server I've set up. So we'll go to 8,000. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I have a little bit of a syntax error. And there we go. There's some really rough country JSONs, just what the source said. They're pretty rough polygons, but they generally do the job. So why don't we set the bounds just like we've done before. Map.fitBounds. And we can do that just after it's added. So we'll go up here, maybe after the add to map. We'll do this to JSON, and we don't really need padding on that, I think, since it's the whole world. There we go. So we see the whole world now. Great. So the next kind of data we're going to get is some dynamic data. This is static data here, and it just, stays the same. The countries do change, of course, over time, but your GeoJSON file won't change with that. You just have to go get a new one if the countries change. So instead what we're going to do is find some data that's changing constantly that we can fetch and get and load on the map however often we want in order to find something interesting.